So, yeah, NC native, North Carolina native. What was it like coming doing the keynote here in front of your hometown crowd?
I can't tell you what an honor it was. I mean, I just, you got to walk your talk when it comes to loving places, and you got to let it show when you're at your hometown. And it was really important to me, even though I think a lot of people get all, keynote, get in the keynote zone, to let people know that you're here for them and you love them best, and that's part of why you're here today. And you don't get to do that in front of every crowd. So when you can, you should let them know that, you're in the pocket for them. I think it's important.
I think also it kind of sends this message like we're on the same team. Like there in your keynote, you had this slide where you had all the different lunches, and then you had the names of different cities, like by the types of lunch. Like one had like a Monster Energy drink, and one was just all over the place. And everybody is just laughing their faces off. And I'm from Michigan, and I don't get it. Like I know why it's funny, but it's not funny to me because I'm not from here and I don't understand. And so I love the idea of like the best communities have inside jokes. Right. Like there are things that because you're from here that nobody else knows.
That's right.
And I thought that was such a beautiful experience for me to see that. It's like here's seven different lunches and everybody's laughing because they're different lunches.
They get it.
And I don't get it. And that's okay.
That's right. And it just shows that places are not interchangeable. Every place has got its own thing. And I think inside jokes are important because I think our conversations around narrative and place identity can be so torturous that you got to have some fun with it.
Torturous in what way? Why torturous?
Well, usually because we have an outsider coming in facilitating us. And so, they're just like, well, what were the things that you think define you as a place? And it's just such a boring place to start. I think one of the coolest ways to start talking about place narrative is asking questions like that. What do you think your school lunches look like? If your town was a school lunch, what would you pack for your kid in this town versus your neighbor's town next door? And it's just a fun way to start a conversation about what can be a dry topic if it's in the wrong hands.
Yeah. I think it also is an opportunity for, when you do ask questions like that, it's an opportunity for the community to maybe for the first time really reflect on itself.
Correct.
Because so many, and I'm sure that you'd agree with this, like so many communities haven't really ever taken a second to say, who are we really?
Right.
Like what are our strengths? What are our opportunities?
Right.
What are things? We're just kind of frantically going through life and we're putting out all these fires and we're responding to the mean people on Facebook and we rinse and repeat that for decades and decades and then wonder why we aren't the community that we wanted to be. And so, well, maybe we have to take a second and ask ourselves important questions.
Well, and that's why I just love this dating and marriage analogy, because if you're in a relationship and you feel like you spend your life just putting out fires for your partner and trying to keep them from losing it and all this other stuff, you will lose yourself in a heartbeat in that relationship. And I think places do have that problem where they lose themselves in relationship with their resident in trying to be so much all the time that they don't know who they are anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's dangerous.
I would say like not even just not know who they are, but a lot of them lose who they are.
Absolutely.
Well, we have to be a tourist town. We have to do all the things that we think tourist towns do. And so now we take this community that might have at one point been a thriving, closely knit community that anyone would die for, and we took a hard right and said, well, we're going to tear all of that stuff down because we need more Airbnbs and we need more ubiquitous condos and we need all of these things so that these people that we're trying to make like us will like us, and in the process we lose who we are. And like we're going to talk in a second with Jeff about this relationship dating analogy, but I think it's such a good one. Like you don't show up at your first date and try to guess what kind of person that person wants you to be and then try to be that person.
Exactly.
Like your best choice is to just be who you are.
Right.
And if they're attracted to you, cool.
Right.
If not, you need to find somebody who is.
Good to know.
Yeah,
right.
Good
It's good to know.
You're not my person. I got to find somebody else who is.
And it's totally fine. And you're not wrong and I'm not wrong. And it's okay. You know, there's that story about that community. I always think of the story about the movie Under the Tuscan Sun.
I haven't seen it.
And it was based on a book and they turned it into a movie. And then it's sort of like with Dan Brown novels, like when places become a main character in a movie or in a production, people start flocking to that place. And that happened to this little small town in Italy where Under the Tuscan Sun is based. And all these, and it's who it was, Americans started saying, well, we want a house with a pool and we want this. And so they started building pools and knocking down old houses to have, and then the fad ended and this Italian town had felt like they had completely sold themselves out and they weren't who they were anymore, and the economics left, and so then they were left with a town that they didn't even recognize. And so the tragedy of Under the Tuscan Sun always weighs on my mind when I think about how easy it is for towns to lose themselves at the mercy of, we might not get another chance, so we got to capitalize. And then they lose themselves in that process.
You're thinking like historical preservation and our historical buildings. Like once you tear that building down, it will never be built again.
No.
Like literally, it is impossible to build a building of that quality with that marble, with that stone.
Right.
Again, you will never get it back.
That's right.
Once that national chain sets up shop right next in your downtown, next to the next one, next to the next one.
Right.
Like you're never getting that back. Like you have lost something. Where I live, Starbucks building a building right in our downtown, right on the busiest one-way in the county.
Yes.
Something like 100,000 cars every single day. It was heralded as this great stamp of approval. See, Starbucks saw us, and they like us, and now see everybody, we're likable. And we never stopped to consider what we might be losing in the process.
Yeah. I think in my town of Cary, I think we're all holding our collective breath for the first time a chain shows up in our downtown.
Oh, really?
We are terrified of it.
Really?
We do not. And it's funny because people who are not me, just everyday residents, they even know that when that happens, it's like Rome has fallen.
Yeah.
And they're terrified of it. And they're going to rally against it really super hard. Because once one comes, then it's, it's over.
Yeah. And you saw it exactly where I lived. Like you have Starbucks, and then all of a sudden now there's a Jersey Mike's and a Pita Way and another McDonald's and another thing.
Right.
So you open up I don't want to say gates of hell, but
I mean,
I'll say it.
But the thing is like in my town, it's so funny. We started hitting really high growth when IBM showed up, and they started this appearance commission in my town. And one of the things that they created very early on is that there would be no neon.
Oh, really?
In our town. So, and that even like the Walmart or the McDonald's, it had to be a beige.
Oh,
you couldn't do your own colors.
Not like crazy.
No.
Don't get crazy.
And they wouldn't approve. And so people are like, there's something different about that sign. I'm like, the McDonald's sign, there's no yellow in it. They're like, oh, yeah.
Wild. Well, at least they have standards. I love the angle of this conversation because coming from Michigan, back in 2020, data was released. So, like a little bit of context, like if you live in Michigan, a lot of people love Michigan. We're crazy about Michigan. We're like, yeah, Michigan. I'm from Michigan. Like we can show where we live on our hand. Things like that. We love going to the UP. And so we thought everything was cool in Michigan.
Yeah.
And then around 2020, data was released showing that Michigan ranks 49th out of 50 states in terms of population growth, followed only by West Virginia.
Whoa.
Where in Bay County, where I live, we are per capita the oldest county in Michigan with an average age of like 63. 1,000 people are dying or moving away every single year. Whoa. That decline has happened unmitigated for at least the next 75 years and is projected to continue for the next 25 years at least. And so you have all of this information coming out in Michigan, and I know a lot of other places across the country are thinking about how do we attract and retain people?
Yeah.
Like how do we attract people here? How do we keep them here? What do we have to do to attach people to our places?
Right.
If you were having a conversation with these communities, like where would you steer them to look or where to start? Because in Michigan, like it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Oh, we have to think about how to get people to stay here and want to come here. Like, how would you start off that conversation of attraction retention?
You know, the thing about attraction and retention that's really important to me is that, you know, how do you attract people who will stay there? Because they find their match in you. And sometimes, again, I use this dating and marriage analogy a lot and because it works and it's so relatable. But part of it is like getting yourself out there. Like some people use dating apps or whatever. The goal is not to just get anybody who will come. The goal is to get the people who will really find their home in you. And sometimes it's a marketing plan. It's like where is our megaphone where we can really tell the world, if you will, what we have here that you can't get anywhere else around here. And so the people that would be naturally attracted to us find us here, because I think it's a false start to just want anybody at any cost. And again, think about dating. Like you don't want to just have anybody at any cost. You want to have the ones who really find their home in you. And so sometimes it's a matter of making sure people know you exist and know what it is that you offer. It's marketing and having a megaphone and having a cute way. You know, I remember in Michigan back in the long time ago, old soul of the community days, where Michigan was doing the sing-alongs and all this stuff that was just, and I really hearken back to that because it got such play and people got to know the towns of Michigan in a different kind of way. And we've stopped doing that. I think we thought it was kind of cutesy and maybe we thought it was gimmicky or whatever, but I'm telling you, it's powerful to have a really big megaphone and let people know you're there and what it is that you have to offer legitimately, like not bullshit, just legitimately what you have that they might love there and intrigue them enough to come check you out. I think that's the most powerful way to start because what you want is people who will stay.
I love that encouragement of putting yourself out there because if people do not know you exist and what you offer, you have exactly a 0% chance of accomplishing the goals that you have to. You could be the most amazing community on the face of the planet.
That's right.
Everything is perfect. New Jerusalem here on earth, light from heaven shining down on your golden brick road. And if people do not know that you are there and you exist and you have those things, they will not be attracted to you. If the residents don't know you have those things, they will not stay. And so I love this encouragement of putting yourself out there. So let's say that a community is putting itself out there. How do communities screw up the message that they send through that megaphone?
You know, and I've seen this more than I like to count. And I think, again, it's very similar to how we as humans behave. The first thing we do is we act like we're all things to all people. And we say, whatever you need, we can be, you know, and that's crap. It's crap. It's not. You cannot be everything everybody needs, you know. So the first thing we do is we start down a road of bait and switch where we say, hey, we can do this, we can be that, we can be whatever you need us to be. And people believe you and they show up there and then the mask falls. And it's like I said in my keynote, there is no other kind of angry resident than a bait and switch angry resident who feels like they bought something that you sold them and it's not true.
That they've been lied to.
Exactly. And you can't recover from that. So I think putting themselves out there, it's like, you know, being okay with who you are, that you can authentically put out there who you really are and not feel self-conscious and not feel ashamed and just be proud of who you are, because that's the only way to find people who are matched to you. It really is. But you have to have the confidence to think it's okay if we're not for everybody. We can try to be better. We can be the best version of ourselves that we can be, but there are some things that are just never going to be true. Like Cary, North Carolina is never going to have New York City's nightlife. It's never going to happen. So stop acting like it's a possibility. Maybe if you come, we can turn it. No, stop it. Be who you are. It's the only way to go.
When communities say, well, young people, why would you not want to build the rest of your life here? We have so many great places to eat, so many things to do, when you might have like 4 good places to eat and one that's okay, like if you're desperate. And you do have things to do, but not really, and not really for your age group. All it takes is for a 19-year-old to step out of their Uber in Detroit and look down one street and go, I've been lied to.
Yes.
My entire life I've been lied to, because all I heard was we have so much, we have so much, we have so much, we have so much, we have so much. And now I have experienced what so much is.
Right.
I now feel like I have been lied to. I love what you said about trying to be all things to all people.
Yeah.
Back when I was learning about marketing, because I don't have a formal education, I took this master class with Seth Godin, and he was talking about positioning, and it's like, well, you can't be fast, cheap, expensive, and the highest quality all at the same time. Like, you get to pick two. And he had this remarkable phrase to illustrate his point of you can't be all things, all people.
Right.
And the phrase is, people like us do things like this.
There you go.
And that's the message that you, I think, as a community have to send to the world.
Right.
It's like, people like us do things like this.
Right.
This is what we value. These are the things that are important to us.
Yes.
These are the things that we love. This is what we're willing to spend money and work time.
Right.
The things that we want to see in the world. If that is you,
right,
we would love for you to come be a part of us.
Yes.
If not, no worries.
Cool.
Lots of places out in the world. But if the first community I worked with, Saginaw, Michigan, 60% impoverished or ALICE population, a downtown that is the absolute case study for urban renewal and the destruction it caused. It was designed to be the new Chicago.
Oh, boy.
And then urban renewal came in and decimated most of that place. It's a city with really incredible challenges. And so if I came out and said, look, everybody, look at this bustling downtown person. Can you stand right in front of that store so that it looks like we have so much here? All it takes is a drive-through to go like, oh, this isn't at all what I thought.
Exactly.
And you've lost the trust of people. Communities move at the speed of trust, and now you've lost everything.
Right. No, that's right. And you know, the thing is I think back to a region in Canada that I worked with, and I don't know if I'll ever forget this. It was like the Norfolk area of Canada, and their whole thing was, I can't remember, I think it was something like, we're the bread basket of Canada, because they produced a lot of the food. And that was their whole thing. Well, they were having a hard time attracting talent to the area. And then some cooking show in Canada happened, like Best New Chef or whatever. And the person that won that competition could not afford to open in a Calgary or a Montreal. And they ended up coming to Norfolk because they thought, well, hell, I'm right next to where the farming is. I can do farm to table here. And these people are so welcoming to me to be a new business. And so next, cut to 5 years later, this guy has started his restaurant there. And all of a sudden, it is the new culinary tourism capital of Canada, because they've attracted a celebrity. But on top of that, they had developed this claim to fame, which was basically because you can't afford to open a restaurant in Montreal. You can afford to open a restaurant here. So sometimes it's not even about we are the best at this. It's we can give you a launching pad. We can be the place you start. And it's just so important that cities always, and towns are the same way. They want to be the best. We're the best at this. We're the best at that. Maybe. But you also can find your narrative in something that doesn't mean you're the best, but you're the thing that people most need. And people don't have it anywhere else but you. So they got on the map, and the next thing you know, they had like pickle tours, and they built this whole narrative around culinary tourism, which is basically eating while you travel, which I thought we all did. But, they made a whole thing out of it, and it was wildly successful. It put them on the map.
I think that a lot of when communities start thinking about this attraction, retention issue, quality of life, they immediately assume that people are looking for places that are perfect.
Yeah.
And I think instead of looking for places that are perfect, people are looking for places with potential.
Correct.
Like, yes, this is acceptable to me. It gives me things that I need, but where can I go with this? Where do I have a potential to live a better life there? Could this be the launching pad for my business?
Yes.
Because like that veil of perfection, like everybody's going to figure out in a day, in a week, that, this is not the perfect place.
Right.
And so instead of leading with that,
why
don't you phrase it like, yeah, you know what? We're a little bit messy around the edges, but we fucking love each other. And and we want to love you too.
Yes.
And look at what we can offer. Yeah, this is rough, but look at what we could do.
Yeah.
Or look at what we could do. Or look at this, and look at this group of people making something out of nothing. Like that's very attractive.
Right. Well, it's like, I'll never forget going to Detroit in like 2010, and everybody was just beating up on Detroit big time. And their slogan, well, first of all, Eminem did a Super Bowl ad about cars, and it would say imported from Detroit. Like they embraced the fact that you guys have counted us out. Cool. And then the new slogan out of Detroit was "Be a hero in Detroit." And it just like, yes, right.
Yeah, Detroit versus everybody.
Exactly.
You see it all over. You go into DTW, you fly into DTW, and you see the Detroit shops, and every single one of those sweatshirts, you have Detroit versus everybody.
Yeah, and it worked. It's one of those, it's like I said, in the keynote, I went through a bunch of slides where I was just saying, pointing out the things about our place. And I was doing it tongue in cheek, but like North Carolinians, most of us, we can't drive in the snow. It is just not who we are. And so don't expect it of us. And again, the marriage and dating thing holds up because, don't ever marry somebody unless you've seen them with the flu. Don't do it. Don't do it. And the same is true about places. I was just talking to some folks out in the courtyard, and they were like, we're concerned that people marry our place too soon. They want to come in and they're so ready. They want to fall in love with us. They have rose-colored glasses, and then later they're here and they're like, wait a minute. And we're like, well, you should have, waited till we had the flu before you buckled down on us.
It's for better or for worse.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So
you got to know what the worst is.
You got to. And everybody tiptoes around the worst and say, well, we don't have that, or we don't. It's crap. You do have that. So people have to fall in love with you with the flu, you without the flu, your bless your heart moment. They really have to be okay with everything that you are. And so to do that, they have to be exposed to that. And that's okay. And too many times we try to hide, like we don't have any problems at all, and it's just bullshit. And that is a hard matzo ball moment when people figure that out. I mean, they know that you're not perfect, but maybe your challenges are not something they feel like they can stick it out for. And you've got to let them know this is where we need you. This is where you matter to us.
I like to use in this like messaging idea, I like to use the phrase to amplify your best.
Yeah.
Because again, like the dating analogy, like you put on your favorite shirt and you make sure it's not wrinkled and you make sure that you smell good and you make like you're thinking about what you want to say or what maybe you could talk about, not because you want to lie to people, but because you want to put your best foot forward. You're not being dishonest, but you're saying this is important and I want to make sure that I do a good job. But that doesn't mean that you can't go to therapy at the same time. That doesn't mean that you can't be honest with somebody and say, you know what, like these are the things that I'm looking for in a relationship. You have a couple more dates, and it's like, you know what, this has been hard for me in the past. This is a thing that I'm working on.
Yeah.
You have to be able to get to that point as well. Yes, amplify your best, but then also say, you know what, I struggle a little bit with.
This is where we struggle.
I have anxiety with my partners because I was cheated on before.
Exactly.
And so that manifests itself in these ways.
That's right.
And if you are meant to have a great relationship, that person across from you goes, I hear you.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to work with you through that.
That's
the person who cannot tolerate that, who does not want to play that game, they say, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm out. And saved yourself both a lot of heartache down the road.
Absolutely. I mean, and a lot of towns have, we were talking a lot about Western North Carolina and what they've been through. And so their challenges are obvious. And it's amazing to me. You could see in that room that people are just falling over themselves because they can get behind that challenge. And that's what you want. You don't want to say, yeah, we're going to be open next week. And it's going to be, I mean, he was like, now our downtown, it was under 8 feet of water. So it might not be back by summer. It's that kind of honesty instead of saying, come on, you can have this just like it never happened, which is just not true. And people get there, tell them this is where we're challenged. And I was even talking to them about, because I do a lot of local history and stuff. I mean, I said, don't wait until your town is all put back together to bring people in and show them. Show them your scars. Show them where it's hurt. And I'm telling you, it will mean more to them than if you wait until everything is perfect and pretty again.
Yeah.
Because then you have backers. And what a lot of towns need these days are backers, people who are in it because I see you and I'm here for it. You can't find it every day. And if you wait until you're perfect, which we never are, you will lose that moment of heartstring where people can all of a sudden become your biggest fans because you've shown them your vulnerability. It's important.
You had a great moment in the keynote where you talked about that. Like here you are thinking that, Western North Carolina, this is facing devastation. Still 6 months later, people literally living in sheds still. You would think that this would be a moment of the bottom falling out of their community pride, but instead the opposite has happened. Sanford Dam in Michigan broke. Sanford Lake flooded the town of Sanford, completely destroying it. And I walked in to the town and everything's caked with mud and houses are on tops of houses and there's dead fish in the road and the street. And I'm going person to person doing interviews and taking photos of the people because I wanted to focus on these people. And at the end of the road is this man dressed in his dress slacks and his polo shirt, very nice polo shirt. And I could tell he was not from Sanford. And I walked up to him. I said, like, what's your story? And he was from the disaster recovery team that Dow Chemical had hired because Midland is like 10 minutes away from Sanford. So Dow Chemical had all of these resources. They call them the best of the best disaster remediation team. And he was like, off the record, because I can't tell you this on the record, is that I have done work like this across the world, and I have never seen a community come together like this here. And I love when you talked about that. It's like when we are confronted sometimes with our worst, that's when we are at our best.
Correct. And we have to, because we're all going to hit our worst. It's just it's like any relationship. It is better for better or for worse. We're all going to hit our worst, and you have to feel like, it's like I say, I mean, we're not perfect. We're going to have our bless your heart moments, as we say in the South. But even our bless your heart moments have to mobilize you to want to be here for us. Even when we're not good, it matters that you're still here in it for us. And I'm telling you, disasters, I'll never forget. Again, I keep thinking about Detroit. I did this presentation at the downtown public library in Detroit. And I remember I walked in that room, and I think a Time magazine, I can't remember, but somebody came out, cover story about, Detroit's just awful. You know? And I remember walking out on that stage and everybody in the audience, I mean, arms crossed looking at me like, what you got? Let's go ahead. And so when I could throw up that strengths and opportunities map and say, you know what, you guys are killing it right here. The chain, like it was literally like an egg cracking off, like the shell. Because everybody needs to feel worthy. And every place needs to, no matter what you're going through, you have to feel like you're worthy of people's love. And this guy came up to me after the presentation, which went really well. But boy, I tell you, at first I was like, oh God, I am in deep trouble.
What's this white girl from North Carolina going to tell us?
With a southern accent. She is not making it out of here. And he said to me, he was like, you know, everybody who could leave left. And so the only people left are us hardcores.
The people who want to be there.
The people who want to be there. Because everybody who was here because they were using us for whatever, or they, you know, they had the means to leave, or whatever the case may be, they've gone. And so what's left here is the hardcores. And he goes, and somehow you found a way to not put the hardcores on defense, because that's all we've been living on, the defensive for so long. You said, this is something we can do today that takes advantage of something nobody ever says to us anymore, which is the word strength. And I'm telling you, it's so important that we give every community a chance to understand what they're getting right before we start hammering them on where they're fucking up. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that word.
That's fine. I'll beep it out. But if I don't, sorry, North Carolina.
Okay, it's okay. Well, I knew I was gonna. I'm just glad I didn't say the F-bomb. I came close a few times on the stage. If you know me very well, my friends will be like, "How'd you get through that without starting to drop them?"
You, me, and Jeff, when we record our episode later, it's gonna be fun.
Like, bam, bam. It's like there's just one long beep. But anyway, I mean, the point being is that you know these people who love their city, that's who you want. And the only way they can be a hero in Detroit is if you be vulnerable about, this is where we need a hero. Who's going to be a hero for us? You got to love them to be able to do that. But I've learned a lot from these towns along the way about what it takes and how to be vulnerable. And the cities that allow themselves some vulnerability to their folks do better, I think, than the ones who Pollyanna their way through life. And act like there's not an issue ever.
I want to talk about the strengths thing. I want to blow that idea up to maybe ideas that any community can use, because like Jeff and I, our episode talked about apathy and like how do you address an apathy problem? How do you address this primary issue of people not caring enough? And something that you talked about in the keynote, specifically in regards to Detroit, was this idea of leveraging your strengths to improve your weaknesses.
Correct.
Can you talk to me about that? Why do that? How does it work? How might it work in a community if that's something that I want to use? Talk to me about this idea.
So, I mean, I'm very strength-based in my approach. I was supposed to be a clinician, a therapeutic clinician. And if you deal with people, even if you think about your boss when you do a performance review, the first thing, if your boss has gone to, you know, any sort of human management seminar, they'll tell him or her, you know, make sure and know their strengths and start with the strengths before you lower the boom on what they're not doing well. I mean, it is a very typical thing that we do to get people mobilized and interested in change. If you want people to be interested in doing something differently, you have to tell them first what they're getting right. And I think we skip over that so much. So the idea between the strengths and opportunities map that I created for towns, which would really chart the things that matter for attachment, and I could always present them, you know, here are the things that matter for attachment that you're actually doing really well at. It was a novel concept for many towns because nobody had ever started with their strengths. But this is why it's important from like a shrink perspective. If I can go into a town and I can say, okay, here's your strengths and opportunities map. Your strengths, the things that matter for attachment that you're doing well, usually it's aesthetics. You know, people will find that their town has found a way to make the aesthetics work. And sometimes the thing that's not going well is social offerings. And that's the example I gave at the keynote. You know, we could do more to have more things to do for different kinds of people. So when you have a map that lays that out, and you can say, well, you guys are really good. Like, you have things that people love in your aesthetics. How could you leverage your aesthetics to create different kinds of social offerings? Because the idea is not to just hammer into the social offerings. You need the carrot to bring people in. And the carrot is often your strength. So, like, we have a great maybe river walk, but we don't, everything shuts down at 6 p.m., you know, or we have a great lakefront that we don't take advantage of. Maybe we could do some social event, social something that takes advantage of the aesthetics to get to the thing that we're not doing as well. Or even openness, you know, something else. I talk a lot of towns struggle with people feeling like they're comfortable in their skin. So how can we leverage our aesthetics to create a more inclusive community? And then the conversations around placemaking, which I can find very frustrating, I'll be the first to say.
Frustrating why?
I don't know. We have the same, like, rule book, the same playbook. Oh, those food trucks, and then we'll, you know, pop-up markets. And I love all that stuff. But, like, first of all, placemaking is not something you just do in public spaces. It frustrates the hell out of me.
Tell me more about that.
Well, people are acting like placemaking is a third space exclusive domain, you know, where it's our downtown or it's our parks or it's how we design our neighborhoods. It's how houses are structured. Do you have a front porch? And the thing that kills me is people are like, yes, we do have a front porch. And I go and look, and it's one of those new urbanism front porches where you can't really even get a rocking chair there. It's just there for looks.
That's my front porch.
It drives me crazy.
Completely unusable.
Unusable.
It's like a curb in front of your house.
Exactly. Yep. And I'm just like, what, you know, all we did with this is our, you know, and it's like, it's bait and switch. It's bait and switch. You act like you have a front porch, and somebody tries to act like it's a front porch, and there is no front porch. You might as well not even have it.
We've got this great mural, but then as soon as you go into the neighborhoods that are not designed for people, in a downtown that's designed for cars and businesses that are not welcoming and all of these things, you're like, yeah, cool, you've put lipstick on this pig.
Exactly.
And
it drives, you know, I see placemaking, if you do it correctly, as the lens by which you view everything about a place. It's not, you know, so many people go, there's our placemaking project. Yes. Point at it. You can look at it. There it is. Now, the rest of this is crap. But boy, I mean, right there, look at that little pop-up market with a tire swing you can swing at.
We did placemaking.
Woohoo! Yeah. We've checked the box.
Yeah.
And then they go past that one block and they're like, what the heck? So and that's one of the things we learned about COVID. And during COVID is like humans innately get placemaking. It's funny when you would see these cul-de-sac communities that at 5 o'clock they'd come out and they'd put these beach lawn chairs in their driveway and just yell at each other because they couldn't get any closer. But at least they did that. You know, that's placemaking. It's the things that people do when no one's looking. And we miss that so much because we're like, oh, we have this cute little pop-up, or we have this food truck rodeo, or we have this. So the thing that frustrates me about placemaking is that it is not a way of life, it's a project. And then it's fake.
Yeah, it's not a state of existence.
It's not.
And how our community exists in this world, it's this box that we can check because we put lights over the street, so everybody must want to stay here for the rest of their lives.
Correct.
Because we put those lights across the street.
Correct.
I think to circle back to what you're saying about like the building on your strengths, I think that's an answer in how to do placemaking better. How to build things, how to do actions that are better. Because like if you look at your assets, you can say, well, we have a killer river walk.
Right.
Instead of going, well, everybody within a 100-mile radius is doing these cool murals, we should do cool murals. Like maybe your authentic engagement with your community and your community's authentic engagement with the world is how do we build a killer riverwalk?
Right.
Instead of putting the food trucks over in downtown, how do we get them on the river?
Right.
Instead of having all the shops downtown close at 5, how do we put all the vendors on the riverwalk? How do we build festivals on the riverwalk?
Right.
How do we do this?
Right.
And now you're building your own thing. You're riffing on these great ideas, but at the same time, you're saying this is who we are, and you can't find another place like us.
Exactly. I was just talking to a couple of folks that are from Eastern North Carolina, and they said to me, it's just, gosh, I love these kinds of events. But she was saying to me, we're down in the beach community, and I don't know how much you know about North Carolina, but we have this thing in the South, and North Carolina and South Carolina is the home of beach music, where it's just music that you shag, which is a dance. You shag, I know, and across the pond it means a different. Yeah, but it's beach music. It's like Carolina girls, the best in the world. And it's a certain vibe. And so she was like, we do these beach music festivals down on the boardwalk, and everybody on my board is saying we need to diversify our music offerings. And she goes, and I have been almost convinced that they were right, but I listened today and I was like, no, we can't change, because you can't get beach music anywhere else but at the beach.
Yeah.
So you're going to turn it in like techno bands and like have all bands in there. Well, you can go to Raleigh, you can go anywhere and get that. The only place you can get beach music is at the beach. So don't rob yourself of your competitive advantage. And it's like you were just saying, like, how do you make sure that you feel you don't get swayed by, we need to be doing more that's different, instead of just doing more of who we are, doing more of that. Because you can't get beach music anywhere else. So why would you give up your competitive advantage?
I was just talking to Jeff Sigler, and he was just in Arkansas. And my first time working in Arkansas was last year, and I was with somebody from the downtown, and they were like, "Oh, we're getting ready for the festival next weekend, and it's the biggest festival in Arkansas. Some hundreds of thousands of people come to this little town for this festival." I was like, "Oh, what's the festival?" And they're like, "It's the Toad Suck Festival." And I was like, it's called the Toad Suck Festival? I was like, yeah, it's local lore, a bunch of fishermen on the beach of the river sucked on a toad or something like that. And I forget exactly what they do, but it's the largest festival in Arkansas. Holland, Michigan, millions of people come for the Tulip Festival.
Right.
Coast Guard Festival in Grand Haven, something over like 700,000 people over 3 days come to celebrate the Coast Guard.
Sure.
And on paper, you think, okay, sucking on toads,
right,
tulips, and the Coast Guard would be horrible ideas to base a festival on. But there's one place in the world where you can go to the Toad Suck Festival, and it is in Arkansas. And so people say, this is an experience that I can only have in this place, and I'm willing to go there to have it. That's right.
And not let anybody tell you differently, no matter how backwoods, weird. Like we have the what is it? The hog calling contest we have in North Carolina. I mean, we have all of this stuff, and don't let them take it from you.
People like us do things like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And it's okay. I don't know. Somewhere along the way, we've gotten the impression that we have to be different than who we are to survive. And it breaks my heart, because I see so many towns turning themselves inside out and burning their competitive advantage at the stake for something of looking on someone else's paper, or somebody told them that who they are wasn't good enough.
Yep. Yeah, especially our small communities, like your competitive advantage is the fact that there is only one Mooresville, North Carolina. Right. If you turn Mooresville, North Carolina into every other place, North Carolina, they're going to go to every other place because it's closer, because they have more stuff, because it's cheaper, all of those reasons.
Exactly.
But if you double down on who you are, you plant that flag in the ground and you say, this is who we are.
Correct.
people come to you because
That's right.
there's only one of you.
That's right. Like, why would you get into the fray where the market is already saturated?
Yep.
It just doesn't make any sense. And when I was talking, one of the biggest reactions in the keynote was when I said, do not turn your place into Disney World. And everybody wants to hear that they don't need bungee cords on every corner. They don't need to be like exploiting themselves. And I'm sad that somebody needs to come along and remind them, don't exploit yourself. Like, again, I think I have a daughter, she's 18, and I've been raising her on my own for a long time. And, these lessons that I give to towns, I have sat down and said to my child, do not exploit yourself for somebody else. Don't change who you are to be with somebody. I mean, it's the same thing. And the relief you see on people's faces when you say you don't have to be Disney World to survive. You can be you and survive and thrive and not feel like the soul-crushing defeat of selling out. But you have to know how to do it, and you have to have the confidence in yourself that you're who you are is good enough. And it's a hard thing for towns. And so when people are reacting like you don't have to be Disney World, you don't have to sell out, the relief on their faces is heartbreaking to me that it's news to them.
I love the direction this conversation took, because it went completely differently than originally I intended. Which are the best conversations in that, like, Katherine Loflin, the city doctor, and we're going to talk about the science, and we're going to talk about the data, and we're going to talk about all those things. But I think, like, the science and the data at their highest and best use are representations of the humanity of our places.
Correct.
And I mean, if you talk about soul of the community, like what are the top three? It's not the hard goods, it's not the jobs, it's not the economic numbers, the spreadsheet stuff. Is the place beautiful?
Yeah.
Is it welcoming? What's the third one?
And is it fun? Can I choose my own adventure in your place? Social
offerings.
Right.
I mean, like these soft, like warm and fuzzy things that we love to run away from and say, well, if we can't, like, if it doesn't make us more money, we can't do it. It's like, well, like the data would suggest otherwise. And like this conversation, I think, is a great representation of that.
Well, the truth is that we expect every town to pick up our garbage. That does not inspire love, because it's an expectation. We expect every town to pay attention to potholes. We expect every town, to have municipal water we can drink. Sometimes that's a false assumption, but that's basic. That's not what's going to tip you into being in love with a place. That's really an expectation of any place. So what attachment is really about is, what is the thing that is above and beyond that makes you feel like this is a place I never want to leave? And I guarantee you it's not potholes that's going to inspire that from you.
Yeah, where I live, there's a lot of talk, of course, about streets, the condition of roads, and a study was put out a couple weeks ago that said if we took our entire city budget and put it towards roads, we would move all of our roads from poor or fair to acceptable in 25 years. And then, of course, we'd have to do it all again.
Sure.
And there are proponents in the community to say, like, well, we can't get rid of the entire city budget, but let's go all in on fixing these roads. And then I come to places like Charlotte or Raleigh or Chicago or these places that people will come across the world to come and experience.
Yeah.
And no one is going through these cities going, yep, they did a good job on this one. Oh, like I see this little pothole. Like no, people are willing to overlook those things because of the substance of the place. What is the experience? What does it look like? How does it make me feel? Are the people nice? Do they greet me with a smile? Do I feel like I'm welcome here? I'm willing to overlook all all of those
Correct.
those things that we think are the most important. Like, yeah, okay, this is wrong, or city council fights every once in a while, or this is dysfunctional. I'm willing to accept those dysfunctions because of how those other human boxes are filled.
Correct.
And like, again, talking about a relationship, the best relationships go, I know every one of your flaws. I get that this is going to be an issue and that we're working through this, but I love you through those. I love you despite those. I love you because of those.
That's exactly right. And in every relationship, you know, we do this thing where we say, well, does the good outweigh the bad? And not every factor is weighted equally. You know, the fact that I feel like I belong, that you accept me for who I am, that's openness in my world, in the world of attachment. I will take, a million potholes for a place that I feel comfortable in my skin in. And that's the simple switch that I'm trying to bring to communities, is understand that not all these things are created equal. And the rarity of finding a place where you really feel like you can exhale. You will accept the pot, and you'll sort of be like, this is the rocky road, you know, I already know, but God, I love it. Even the things I hate, I love, you know, and that's really important. Not all things are created equal. And I think when we fixate on potholes and all of that stuff, it's because we don't have a soft place to land in the things that humans require. So we can fixate on potholes because we have nothing else that gives us that soft place to land in our place. So, you know, it's a slippery slope, but the more we think about our relationship with our place as the way we think about our relationship with other, a lot of things start clicking into place and start making a lot more sense.
I almost want to say too, like, the fixation on the potholes and the jobs and the economy and all of those things, well, I just want to be clear, are all very important.
Yep, they are.
They are all very important. But our obsession with them, I want to say, as communities, we almost use them as an excuse not to do the messy work of communities. Like, it's really easy to say, there is a pothole, I'm going to fill it. Look at us, we're a great community, we're doing a great job. Meanwhile, city council is literally getting thrown in jail, cannot communicate, so dysfunctional. Citizens versus government, like, there is a chasm so vast and so deep. Everybody hates each other, they loathe each other. And so it almost gives us an excuse not to deal with that messy human stuff, because we're like, well, look, we brought 7 new jobs to this community, aren't we great? Meanwhile, people just absolutely loathe one another. And we don't know how to address that. We don't want to address it. It seems really intense. And so we're like, yeah, but look, we have a mural.
Correct. And I think a lot of leaders don't, it's hard to play in messy. And humans are messy. So potholes are it's like painting a wall. Like, I know what I did. I paved that pothole. And you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs tells you that, you know, you have to have food, clothing, and shelter. But I think the second or third thing up the hierarchy is belonging. And so I agree with you. Like, I have talked to the UN. I have dealt with communities who literally carry their houses on their back and go from, they're nomads. And they want to know how they can create attachment to the house that they carry on their back, and will be in a different place every 5 days. So the point being is that, you know, there's a lot of trying to find home in place, even when the hierarchy, when you think about Maslow, is not even met, you know. But I've always been like, hey, let's work on food, clothing, and shelter. And then, but right after food, clothing, and shelter is belonging. That's what humans require. And so place is where belonging happens. So as soon as we know, okay, where we're living tonight, we have shelter, we feel relatively safe, the next thing we need to self-actualize, to become the best humans we can, is to have a sense of belonging. And that's where place comes in very quick. People act like belonging is way high up on Maslow's hierarchy. It's number 3. It's food, clothing, and shelter, safety, belonging.
I also love thinking about, like, the Maslow's pyramid, like if you flip it upside down, that it's also a way to address your basic needs, because like self actualization, belonging. If you're also addressing those ideas, kind of hearkening back to the conversation, the podcast episode we just had with Jeff, is like if you are making people feel like they belong, like this is a place of potential where they can live a good life, where they are seen and they're understood, that's going to make them care more. And now we start getting those basic needs taken care of. Or like, for instance, food deserts in cities. Well, the people that can get food don't care about the food desert. Like, I can get my food whenever, wherever I want. I can get it delivered to my house.
Right.
But if we get them to care about a community more, now it says, well, this place has given me this sense of belonging. Right. I feel like it has poured into me. I need to pour into it. And that means taking care of people, even though I don't have a direct benefit. And so I'm going to support that new food bank, that food club that's going in. I'm never going to shop there, but it's important for this entire community to have that basic need met. That's
exactly right. And it really pulls in another thing we haven't talked about directly, but I think we're dancing around, which is this whole idea of person and environment fit. And once you feel like you are fit with your environment, you want to support the environment that creates that sense of fit for you.
Because you want to keep it.
Because you want to keep it.
Yeah.
It is, and we can act like it's altruism and I care about my fellow man, but at the end of the day, I don't really care what motivates people to feel that way. It's the idea that I have to maintain this environment because I don't want to lose the connection I feel to it. So if it means I'm doing things that I don't directly see the benefit of, but it maintains the ecosystem and keeps it where I need it to be for me, I will do it. And that's what in the keynote I was talking about when you marry your place. That's what it comes down to, where you start, I see my future inextricably tied to the place's future. So if it goes down, I'm going to go down too, and I can't have that. So I will do whatever I have to do to maintain you, partner, because I need you to maintain me. And even if it means I don't directly benefit from that, if imagine if your partner wants to go back to school, and you're not going to, they're probably going to be gone more. It's going to cost you more in taxes. It's going to, whatever. You're like, okay, but it's going to make us maintain what we have here. Even though I won't see a direct benefit, it's important to me that I support you in doing that.
Yeah. To your point about it doesn't really matter the motivation. Where the first black mayor in Saginaw, one of the first black mayors in the country, actually, he had this phrase about enlightened self-interest.
Right.
Is what he called it.
That's right.
Like, let's not bullshit ourselves. Like people have to have some kind of skin in the game, some kind of benefit, whether it's my life is better materially, or it makes me feel good, or like there has to be some kind of reward. And this idea of enlightened self-interest, I think, catalyzes that a lot.
It sure does.
If somebody listened to your keynote, if somebody listened to this conversation and they're on fire, they're like, okay, I'm hearing about openness, I'm hearing about attachment, I'm hearing about like humanity and all of these things. I want to apply an idea of this conversation to our place. Like, where should people start when they go back to these communities and they want to do good? Where should they start? How should they begin?
I think one of the best things you can do to start, and it's such the opposite of where usually people do start, is find the thing that your community does better than anywhere else around. Start with your strengths. To have a conversation about what you're getting right, because I guarantee you not a lot of people are having that conversation. Be the guy in the room who can talk about, we have the best damn pickle festival, or we have, people come here for this, and how can I take what we're getting right to help with what we're not getting right? Because everybody's focused on deficits and problems and where we're failing. You will be the lone guy in the room who's going to say, but you know what we have? Like, we're the home of, like in my town, we're the home of the first public high school in North Carolina. We were the first desegregated school in the county. Like, what are the things that are your claims to fame that people are not talking about? that are leverage points to success that you can build stuff around. I'm a big believer in strength-based approaches. I don't see a better way to motivate social change than through strength-based approaches. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of people in the room. And if they're doing it, it's very like, we're a great place to live, work, and play. Okay, what the hell does that mean? Give me a specific. Know the specifics of what it is that you can do. Don't just give me a tagline that could be true for any city in this country if they wanted it to be. What is it? What is it? You know, and then exploit the hell out of it.
You and Jeff talk so much about pride, and I define pride as love with proof.
Yes.
Like if you expect, and we should all expect people to love our communities, like that should be a thing. We should want people to fall head over heels in love with our communities. That requires some proof.
Correct.
And so I love this idea of looking for that proof wherever it is,
right,
and saying, see, look what we can do really, really well.
Right.
How do we do that better?
Right.
And how do we do the things around it better?
Right.
If you look at like asset-based community development, they talk about like you go into the neighborhood, the most impoverished neighborhood with the least amount of resources you possibly can, and you go, hey, what can you do?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I've got free time from 3 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. every single day, and my kids moved out, but all I want is like my house full of kids. Like, do you think you could watch their kids because they don't get out of work until 6?
That's
like,
right.
Heck yeah, I can. Like, that's what you can do. That's what you have to work with.
Right. I have to talk about the example of Charlotte in the Northwest Corridor, which is a disadvantaged community I worked a lot in. And I did a community walk there, and I did another one in Minnesota when I was up there for a while. And I walked in Frogtown. I will never forget this. Walking around, and everybody was talking about the disadvantagedness of this neighborhood and how they wanted to, because the rail was running through it, as they usually do in disadvantaged neighborhoods. And I walked around and I just saw something different. What I saw was very humble houses, and almost every other yard had a bird feeder.
Really?
It had a bird feeder. And these are people, I can imagine, talk about food desert, that they might not have a ton of, but they maintained their bird, they fed the birds. And so I just kept seeing these bird feeders. And finally, I just said, we got to stop. I want to show y'all something that you're not seeing here. And it's a strength that you're not capital. So these are, it's called scale, or they would have just one potted, flowering plant on their porch. It was a simple thing, but it was so powerful to say that the pride that I feel in my place and in my neighborhood manifests in ways that we miss. And the bird feeder example was, and they were bluebird, and you could hear bluebirds. You could hear the birds nesting. It was springtime. You could hear them because they had the feeders. So they created this aesthetics. You could see kids who knew that they'd named the birds. They sat on the porch after school, see if the birds were coming, and other neighbors would. It was a whole thing. It was social offerings, aesthetics, and openness around a bird feeder in a community where I am sure it took budgeting to have bird seed, but they got it. And they did that. So it's like what you're saying, we have to be able to always find the strengths in a place, and they might not be as big as you think, but they are just as powerful in being that turning point for places. And
it sounds like you're encouraging people to look at their strengths as a community. But in order to find those strengths, you really have to look at your community for what it is.
You have to.
Not what you think it is, not what you think it should have.
Yeah.
Not what so-and-so community 100 miles to the north is doing really well, so how do we replicate that here?
Correct.
You look for the bird feeders.
You look for the bird feeders. You look for the bird feeders, because what that tells you is pride in place. And that tells you, and there's something optimistic about somebody who wants to make sure it's a simple thing, and yet it's such a powerful thing, and people miss it. And then they miss the strengths, and all they see is a disadvantaged community. But what I see is the geranium, and what I see is the bird feeder, and the birds who love it, and the kids who love it, and or even if it's just a mowed lawn, it's important, and you have to say, okay, this indicates something is happening here that we can take advantage of, and we can make better for the rest of the community.
Katherine Loflin, your keynote, amazing. This conversation, amazing. The work you're doing in all our communities is amazing. If people are like, oh, this is the first time I've heard of this city doctor lady, if they want to follow you, if they want to follow up with you, check you out, where can people do that?
So a couple of things on Facebook. The city doctor has her own page, so it's easy to find. And I also have a production company that tells the story of places, and that's the City Doctor Productions.
Awesome.
So those are the best ways to get up with me and be able to contact me directly.
People, you got to do it. Katherine, you're amazing. Thanks so much for this conversation.
I appreciate it.
Woo! You're awesome.
Hey!